So we just finished the book we've been reading for the semester, The Happiness Advantage, and I do hope all of you read it or are going to read it or starting to read it or glad you read it. But it's encased in our full year of working on the year of the Ram, working on going more towards our internal practice and our spiritual practice. So again, the three bodies that Guruji always refers to as the external body, internal body, spiritual body. And this practice is really meant to feed all three of those and keep us healthy in all three of those. So we're focusing on the latter ones. So the 8 limbs of Ashtanga, which as your teacher, I expect you all to know the 8 limbs of the Ashtanga 8 limbs, and understanding that the first 4 limbs are the external limbs and the latter 4 are the internal limbs. So this year we're studying the latter 4 limbs of the 8 limbs. This week specifically we're studying the first of the latter 4, which is, does anybody know? Pratyahara. Thank you, Melanie. So Pratyahara is very important for us to understand. It's a major part of our yoga philosophy, the Ashtanga method. What is it? Yeah. So the literal translation is to withdraw from your senses. And on Sunday I read Iyengar's definition of it, and I loved his definition because it says that we withdraw from the senses and that we're also sort of liberated through that. Because I think sometimes that philosophy of withdrawing from the senses is confusing, right? So the senses are wonderful, right? Like I can enjoy the beautiful smell of a rose. I can enjoy the touch of somebody's hand. I can hear a beautiful violin piece. All this is our senses. So why on earth would we want to withdraw from those? It's kind of weird yoga stuff. Why withdraw from your senses? Why do that?
They can be distracting at times.
Yes, exactly. So in the way that we talk about that this practice is meant to help us train our bodies to be more healthy, and I do chaturangas every day, every month, every year, and you can see my body physically change and get stronger in my arms and my back and my shoulders. So in the Ashtanga method, we're doing exactly the same thing with our minds. We're trying to train our minds. As Guruji would say, because the mind is a monkey, right? So it's all over the place. So we're trying to train the mind to be present. And you know, we talked about our quotes for this year by John Milton, Paradise Lost. The mind is its own place and neither makes heaven a hell or hell a heaven. So our goal this year was to make this our heaven. So how do we do that on our yoga mats? Well, we do that by being focused and being present and going internal rather than constantly being in the external world, right? So I always tell the story at the old Shala. We moved a year ago, right? The old Shala, when I first opened, used to be next to a fudge kitchen. True story. So especially at night, but sometimes during the day too, but we'd be practicing at night to the smell of chocolate baking, peanut butter baking, and to make this even more of a great experience, the couple that was doing the baking was a Bulgarian couple that used to fight all the time. So we'd be there doing our practice and smelling peanut butter and chocolate and hearing this couple go, ba-ba, 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 ba-ba. And I would always tell my students, Pratyahara. We're practicing withdrawing from our senses, right? So Desikachar kind of describes it as like walking dogs. So if you had 5 different dogs on a leash and none of them were trained to be walking on a leash, and they're all different sizes and stuff. Have you ever seen this? And the dogs are like pulling the person around, right? And it's like, your dogs are walking you, you're not walking your dogs. But it's the same idea with the 5 senses. So we don't want the 5 senses to pull us around and distract us and move us here and there. We want to control and train our mind so that we can train ourselves to be present as we need to. And enjoy, and actually for me, I think this type of training is really profound because the more you can train yourself not to be distracted, the more you can be fully present for the 5 senses. You know, the more we practice on our mats, not being distracted by the sound of the trucks and by how, you know, Kathy looks today or how the person smells next to us, sometimes, good. what happens when we train ourselves, then we're more present for the actual practice. We're more in our minds, we're more in our internal bodies, and it's a more powerful experience for us. Have you ever had a primary series practice where you're just so distracted the whole time thinking about something, or something in the room was bothering you, and it really pulled you from the depth of your practice? So it's the same idea for us. We do this on our mats, and we do our training on our physical body, so we have beautiful, healthy physical bodies for our life. We do the same thing where we practice, training our minds. So then when I go and I have a coffee date with Melanie, and the two of us just have 1 hour to spend together, I am fully present with her. I'm enjoying my conversation with her. I'm just enjoying being with her. I'm really there. And so as things are happening around us, I said one of my major distractors for all of us, I think, has become our phones. So can I not be distracted and really be present for Melanie is really what we want to do when we're practicing for our lives. So I'll finish so you guys understand the quote at the end of class with a movie called Up. Has everyone seen Up, animated film? Great, if you haven't seen it, it's a great film. It's sort of the middle of the film, they are off on some adventure, and there are these dogs there that the scientists made special collars for. We'll have to get some for the puppies, where they can speak to humans when they have their collar on. They have all these different languages. They can speak Japanese and French. And so in the movie, they're speaking to the humans, the dogs, and then all of a sudden, squirrel. Then we're talking to the humans again, and then another one, squirrel. Have you guys ever had a dog and you know how true that is? If there is a squirrel and it's the dog is completely lost to anything else, right? So it kind of happens for us too, and I see it on the mats, like you guys will be doing your practice and all of a sudden the Indian wooden door opens. Squirrel. Who came through the door? And I was like, that's not your drishti. This is your drishti. But we see on our mat so clearly how easily we're distracted by something, And it's a good practice for us to see that, not be distracted by that, but see it as a squirrel. So at the end of class, I'm going to sort of ask you guys to think about in your lives what your squirrels are. As always, I honor you guys for taking this practice into your lives. Namaste. And this week's quote to go with our teachings is from Katha Upanishad. When the five senses in the mind are stilled and the reasoning intellect rests in silence, then begins the highest path.